My name's Cheyenne. I'm here with the Texas Injured Workers Program or Association. I've seen many men and women with cancer and respiratory illnesses, including both my grandpas and my father. When my parents go to the Texas Injured Workers meetings in Port Lavaca, Texas, I stay for about 20 minutes and then I leave to go down to the water just to go pick up PVC pellets, sometimes in the 200s. Formosa Plastics, which is in Port Lavaca and Point Comfort, is across the bay from where the meetings are held. I have personally found PVC pellets that have floated all the way across the bay from Formosa's discharge pipes. My father was a whistleblower at Formosa for 20 years. They made him wade through PVC, pretty much all the wastewater throughout the plant. Sorry.
It's okay.
My father is permanently disabled from all this chemicals that got released and everything he had to walk through. After he denied pushing it out to the ocean, they fired him. We went to TCEQ and FBI, and Formosa went to links which involved my mom and dad getting beat up down the river from Formosa, lug nuts getting loosened on a vehicle at our house. Our house was shot at. Helicopters circled me and my brothers, and then dang, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
In the yard, but yeah. One of my dad's friends, we call him Cat, and I knew him. Everybody. He was one of my dad's best friends, and he worked at Formosa for a long time with him. And a few months ago, he had to get 8 inches of his intestines removed, and they were just pumping stuff out of his lungs. And when I go down to the water, you can pick up little PVC pellets from the debris line, and you can literally build PVC pellet castles instead of sand castles. It's horrible. I don't know what else to say.
Here's what we get to do now. So talk a little bit about some solutions. I think are probably a good idea. As you heard, the industry in the Gulf has impacts, on the environment. It's got impacts on the kind of physical environment. It's got impacts on our air quality. Clearly, these are also huge sources of global warming pollution, greenhouse gases, the refineries, the PVC plants, like Cheyenne was talking about. All that infrastructure is incredibly destructive. It's not just destructive to the environment; it's destructive to the communities. The pollution that's it's called. A buddy of mine coined the term "cancer alley." They like to call it the chemical industrial corridor, right? And they like to call it America's energy coast. And don't use their words; use our words. This is Cancer Alley. This is the nation's energy sacrifice zone. And people like Cheyenne, his parents, grandparents, have paid a very heavy price for it. Our ecosystem is paying a very heavy price for it. And what are we doing? We've got politicians who, are hardwired to do what the industry wants them to do. They don't see a conflict between, asking to spend BP's fines and penalties on restoring this ecosystem. At the same time, they're railing against the Obama administration for slowing down drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. and railing against the EPA for their job-killing global warming rules and regulations they might someday create. These politicians have been, I don't know if it's bought and paid for. They've just kind of been created by that culture that's down there. Because, me and Cheyenne, we're like not the power players. I know, I'm wearing a sport coat. But no, the reality of it is, like, the powers that be down there they don't see a conflict. They're able to hold two ideas. And it's really interesting because the issue that I just talked to you about, Louisiana's coastal wetlands crisis, that is an issue that actually the powers that be in Louisiana see as really important. So this is the one, and actually there's a huge campaign that's called the America's Wetland Campaign. And that is funded by BP, it's funded by Shell, it's funded by Chevron, and the story they tell about why Louisiana's coast is in a crisis state, funny enough, it doesn't include some of the things I just told you. It does not talk about the 40 to 60% of the land loss that's being caused by the oil industry and their legacy. It certainly doesn't talk about worker health issues. That does not ever come up. But their idea that we need to fix the wetlands because it's important for New Orleans and important for the state, they all like that. And the solution they've got is that the U.S. taxpayer just needs to foot the bill and pay to fix it. Because, the U.S. taxpayer, I think they do need to play a role. It's a big fix. It's billions of dollars. But I do think that if we don't hold the oil industry accountable, like, dude, who's doing really well right now? Is it the U.S. taxpayers or is it the oil companies? It's like, where's the justice in that? So we've got a few different things that we're doing. I think the BP disaster is important it's like a teachable moment. And we've got a panel later on after this one that's going to have some great speakers. Sheree Foytland, who walked here from New Orleans, walked to Washington, D.C. to get President Obama to commit to the Gulf and to commit to recovery and commit to the worker health issues, which are incredible. And the people who have been cleaning up the oil and have been poisoned by the oil, they need help. This is 9/11 workers all over again, except it happened in the bayous of Louisiana, not in Manhattan. So, I think it's going to be even more challenging to get them to acknowledge what happened in the bayous. But if we can get the oil industry to be kind of the nation to learn that BP isn't the one crisis that happened with the oil industry in the Gulf of Mexico, but more kind of symptomatic of how these multinational corporations and our government has let the oil industry exploit the Gulf of Mexico, that's why we came up here. Like, this is the issue that people need to understand. They're all linked. And that the BP disaster is like the exclamation point on a really, really long run-on sentence describing the abuse that's happened down there. So there's a few things that I hope you guys can do to help us. On the 20th, so in a few days, the Wednesday, is the anniversary of the blowout. So the starting point of the BP disaster was a year ago Wednesday, which is crazy to me because it's like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's been a year. But as I think back, it hasn't really been a year. Because at first we thought, oh, that's horrible that 11 people died. But an explosion on a rig was not exactly news, right? It was the worker issue that was really tragic, and everyone felt horrible about that. Like, I don't know, they killed more people. I hate that this happened. But like, only after the oil, we realized how bad this was. There's okay, so I'm sorry, I'm a little scattered. I usually have a PowerPoint to keep me in check. But what we do know is that on Wednesday, don't call it the Gulf oil spill, please, because you're going to have to be a lot more specific, because there's an oil spill a day in the Gulf of Mexico because of the oil industry, on average more than an oil spill a day. But what we call it is the BP drilling disaster. And on that day, you should do something. I don't know what it is. I've got some suggestions. It's really close to Earth Day. If you're going to be at an Earth Day festival, or if your campus is doing an Earth Day event, come and talk to me, because we can get you materials so you can remind the nation that this is still going on down here. The oil is still in our marsh, it's still affecting our communities, and it's symptomatic of how we've treated the Gulf of Mexico. You can go like healthygulf.org or Gulf Restoration Network, that's us. You can like us on Facebook. We'll be putting stuff out there to get people to take action on that day. Send an email to the president getting him to commit, because here's what's happening. BP's fines and penalties under the Clean Water Act could be enormous. It could be anywhere from $5 to $20 billion that BP will have to pay because they broke the law and they spilled so much oil. 15 Exxon Valdez's were spilled into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's worth $5 to $20 billion. It's $20 billion if they were found to be grossly negligent, which I've been paying attention. It seems like it, I'm no lawyer, but it seems like they fit that characterization. But what BP is pushing to do is they're disputing how much oil they spilled. They're saying it's like half or less than what the experts in the federal government pulled together say. They're also saying, oh, you shouldn't fine us per barrel. You should fine us per day that we spilled the oil, and that'll cut it by cut it in half again. So they're going to try to drag this out legally as much as possible. We need to hold them accountable as well. The oil industry, or Obama can certainly do some of that, but we need to engage with the corporation. So on Monday, I hope you guys are around for the action. There's a stop at the BP lobbying headquarters. We're going to be pushing them to commit the money to the Gulf right now. And I think it's something where, we can hold them accountable if we've got leadership. Leadership only happens if we demand it, and I think that's where you guys come in. We've got some postcards you can sign asking for that type of commitment. But I do think, ultimately we need to make sure that this isn't just like there's that one example of how we kind of screwed up and now it's back to business as usual, right? We need to learn from this. We need to get off oil. We need to make sure there's health care for injured workers, health care for the cleanup workers who are being poisoned. We need to make sure that the rules are put in place so that this never happens again. Because, as much as I would like to say we're going to get off oil tomorrow, we won't. We need to start getting off oil tomorrow, don't get me wrong, like today, and I think that's part of what today is, right? But the reality is we'll still use oil for a while, and we need to make sure that there are laws in place so BP can't cut corners, and all the other oil companies, they all say that BP screwed up, and they would never do that. If you remember the testimony when they had Exxon and Chevron CEOs all up there throwing BP under the bus, saying that, oh, BP's horrible, they have all these thousands of violations. BP's violations that were in the thousands were all from refineries. And yeah, BP runs a horrible refining process. Like, they have problems all the time. Texas City, a huge explosion, killed workers. So yeah, BP's bad in the refining world. And they, I think, set records there. But offshore, which I think actually was what the accident was, right? If you look at the offshore accident and spill numbers, BP isn't necessarily outrageously horrific. They're not good, but all the big ones have similar amounts of oil that they'd spilled in the past or major safety violations offshore. So when the oil companies said, yeah, we never have the problems that BP had offshore, that was a lie. I hope you understand. Sometimes oil companies lie. But, they were up there just doing everything they could to spin away and get back to business as usual in the Gulf of Mexico. And unfortunately, I think that's basically what we're doing right now. And there needs to be some significant rule changes offshore to make sure the community has some ability to hold them accountable. All right? All right, you got
I
one.
have a quick question about
Awesome.
pellets. I'm a high school student and I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I just don't know exactly what they are. Are they used to make plastic things or something?
You can make anything with plastic, from plastic bags to plastic cups, anything.
So Formosan makes these pellets, and this is what they export to other companies to make other things, basically.
They've spread from that county to the next county, buying up property down the railroad track, and have made production plants that use those PVC pellets and PVC powder. They put in their own rail line, they have their own pipelines to the ports, they have their own distribution companies. They came in and they just moved in, and they're foreigners. They have no respect or value for life, and they continue to do this. The rail tracks leak PVC powder out of the boxcars. The pellets are discharged out into the bays. They don't care. They don't care. You breathe it, you consume it in the fish. Those are known carcinogens. Cancer Alley spreading. It's coming down to South Texas.
Yeah, PVC plants are incredibly nasty. and dangerous, and I think that is again the example, like, all right, plastic, where does the plastic come from? It's a hydrocarbon-based thing. Like, we got to start moving off this, but we also need to hold them accountable now.
Yes.
And I think groups like the Texas Injured Workers, working to make sure that those stories get told and that people get engaged and that our politicians do more to hold TCEQ accountable. Like, these are the regulators. They got very clear and really usually very good laws about the environment. The laws and the regulations don't always match up, and the regulations are rarely truly enforced. And that requires us getting engaged. So thank you so much for coming.